So, all right, so we can have it on record. Would you gentlemen tell us your names?
Yeah, sure. My name is Towne Bannon, strangely enough. Towne is strange, Bannon is not. Anyway, go ahead, John.
My name is John Thomas. I was born in Portsmouth, went to Portsmouth High School, and that's about it.
And what year were you born, both of you?
Both of us in 1930. We're about
a month apart.
Oh, fantastic.
Right.
And both of you are from Portsmouth originally?
Yes, we went to kindergarten together. Good God.
Aw.
Soon after kindergarten was invented.
Uh-huh. And I understand that you have a lot of information to share with us because your family was a very prominent one at the beginnings of Portsmouth. Would you, I know this is a very vague question, but could you kind of start us out telling where they came from, how they got here?
Yep. Yeah, sure. In about 1837 or 1838, our great-great-grandfather, whose name was Edward Bannon, immigrated with his brand new wife from Ireland and came to New York. And in New York, he heard that there was activity on the frontier. There was a little settlement on the Ohio River called Portsmouth, and it seemed to be growing. He was a carpenter by trade. He thought, well, that sounds like a good place to go. Being a carpenter, they have to be building houses, so that's where they came. And he settled and all that. He and his wife had 2 children. One was named James, and his sister was named Mary. Mary eventually married a man named Mulligan and was known by everybody as Aunt Mary Mulligan. She taught high school here for God knows how long. In my lifetime, I remember people, as an adult, people telling me, oh, I remember Aunt Mary. I went to high school. She was my high school teacher. James, kind of an interesting guy. The wife died in childbirth, 5 years later. So as a very young child, he and the girl, the father took him back to New York to go back to Ireland because he thought, there's no way I can raise these 2 kids, by myself. And when he got to New York, he found all boats arriving from Ireland filled with people. The potato famine had arrived, and people were dead in the streets in Dublin from starvation. So obviously, returning to Ireland was not a good idea. And he married a girl that just off one of the boats named Marcella, and married her and Marcella, and Edward and the 2 kids came back to Portsmouth. The boy, well, the new wife didn't care for the little boy, I guess because she, was a previous wife and all that. So they had a lot of problems, and the boy was really kind of a street urchin, I guess. Finally got a job, maybe at 11 or 12 years old, stocking a grocery store shelf, and liked to read, so the grocer would loan him books, and eventually he said he thought he'd like to be a lawyer. So the grocer introduced him to a lawyer, a judge in town, named Judge Towne. That's where my name came from. And he read the law there and became a lawyer, and he needed money to open a law office and to marry the girl that he wanted to marry, whose name was Mary Elizabeth Smith. And so he went down and enlisted in the Civil War, and the idea was he would save all of his money from the Civil War, and when he got back he'd have enough to open his office and marry his girlfriend. So all that happened, and he became a lawyer and was a great success at it. He had 4 children, Henry Bannon, who was my grandfather, and Arthur Bannon, and Charlotte Bannon, and Jim Bannon, who was John's grandfather. And chime in with anything you've got about Jim.
Well, my grandfather, James, or I should say his father, became a judge here in Portsmouth. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
And Mary Smith, and Mary Smith was the
Was the sister
sister of Helmer and Jake Smith.
That's right.
Right, Chuck? Now, does that lead you down another path? Jake Smith is another story, and Towne can tell it.
Well, yeah, not really a very happy one. He was a general in the Army, and at the time, we went over to the Philippines and drove out the Spanish. It was all, I guess, related to the Spanish-American War. Anyway, we took the Philippines from the Spanish, and the Filipinos were extremely grateful because they'd been under the thumb of the Spaniards for many, many years, and they were very grateful until they realized that, gee, our saviors aren't leaving. They're staying. So gradually, it sounds a little like Libya today, gradually they began to, grumble and eventually rebel in small groups. There was an island called Samar in the Philippines where the discontent got very strong. And so anyway, there was a rebellion kind of brewing in the jungle away from the port, and they eventually swept down and attacked the American garrison there at early morning breakfast, killed a bunch, and so the headquarters, U.S. headquarters in Manila said, all right, we can't obviously tolerate this kind of rebellion. So they sent Jacob Smith down to quell this, and well, he really did. He went down there and got all the local U.S. people together and gave them orders to quell this rebellion at all costs. And when the local U.S. military said, how, to what degree, he said, kill them. Kill all males. And one of them said, down to what age? And he said, 10. Seems a little extreme, doesn't it? And they went about doing that, and there was an enormous massacre. And the Hearst newspapers got wind of it, and of course it was a wonderful way to sell newspapers. And so he became infamous, really, and was brought back for court-martial. Anyway, the newspapers were full of it, and well, anyway, he left military service, was discharged. He still managed to get into, what's the National Cemetery in Washington?
Arlington?
I'm sorry?
Was it Arlington?
Yes.
Yes. At any rate, he was the, everybody kind of needs a war criminal that adds spice to the family tree, I guess. Anyway, he was the sister of Mary Elizabeth Smith, who had married our great-grandfather, James. How on earth did you get me started on this?
I'm not sure, but it was a great story. So I know that, so you've told us the beginnings of how your family came to be in this area, and I understand that they have had a marked effect on the development of Portsmouth and the surrounding area. Would you care to tell us a little bit about how that came about? And
I don't want to monopolize this, John.
No, please. You have more to offer than I do.
Old James, the son who started out as kind of a street urchin because his stepmother didn't want him in the house, finally came back from the Civil War, had saved his money, did open a law office, and marry his wife, and went on to become a very, very successful lawyer, became a judge here in town, and I think I mentioned had 4 children. There was Henry and Arthur and James Jr. and Charlotte. I think I already said this. Henry was my grandfather, James was John's grandfather, and of course Arthur had grandchildren as well, Edith and Katie? Catherine, okay. Charlotte did not marry, so she did not have children. And they all seem to have a knack for doing the right thing, making money, and investing smartly. And old Judge James, bought a huge farm down in the Souda Bottomland, and very rich soil and grew vast amounts of crops and whatever, and it was a really successful bunch. I wish more of that had rubbed off on me. But at any rate, anyway, they became, kind of major figures in town. There's a Bannon Park.
This is what I was going to ask about.
Right.
Is
the family compound was right on the hill above Bannon Park. It used to have old James's house, huge place. James, his son, John's grandfather, had a great house there as well. And I think even Henry Bannon lived there for a while, and Arthur before he was married. Henry and Arthur eventually moved away from that family compound, but there's a big old carriage house still there, which is the only thing remaining. The two huge houses and enormous property are gone.
Did they own that surrounding area and then donate the property in which Bannon Park is on?
I think, yes. They owned the whole thing, including that hillside, which is still just forested, empty, overgrown. And Bannon Park is right below it. So I think they bought that whole tract, and that's how it got to be called Bannon Park.
oh,
One little sidebar that you may already know about, or at least would be part of the history, when Jake Smith was court-martialed, Towne's grandfather, Henry, happened to be a member of Congress at that time. And Henry defended his what?
It would have been his father-in-law. I guess it was his wife's brother. No, his mother's brother.
Yeah. Defended him in the court-martial that was taking place in the House of Representatives. Kind of ironic.
Fair enough.
Neither of us knows for sure what really officially happened with the court-martial, whether the House voted to court-martial or they didn't. But at any rate, his career was certainly over because of the scandal and all that. So I'm not sure whether he went through court-martial. Maybe if he had, he would not have been buried in Arlington. I don't really know.
right. Well, I had a question. Sitting on that table in front of you, we have a book that we have in our collection here at the library, and that I understand, is that your grandfather's?
Yeah. I really love the title, Stories Old and Often Told. I don't know whether he came up with that or whether it's a quote. He loved to quote all sorts of people. Yeah, anyway, it's a kind of history of Scioto County and all sorts of details about Scioto County. It was the first, he wrote 3 books in all in his life, and this was the first of them. And it begins, in prehistory genealogy, not genealogy, but geology, as far as I remember, the formation of the Ohio River and the hills, and came down to what was then the current time, about 1920s, I suppose, something of the sort. There was all that fuss about the rock a year or so ago. The story of the rock is in here, and what it was, and at that time, the rock had just gone underwater. About 20 years before, the rock
And for
had
clarity's
disappeared.
sake, this rock that we're talking about is...
Well, the one in the river, it was the rock that we fought over with Kentucky recently. And
Portsmouth Indian Head Rock.
That's right, Portsmouth Indian Head Rock.
And it's worth noting that his grandfather Henry could be to blame for this because he wrote the book and Steve Schaefer read the book and went and stole the rock out of the river.
Right. That's right. But it would be wrong to blame us. We're just descendants. At any rate, I guess this was such a thorough Scioto County history. It was used, I think Steve said, as a textbook when he was in the 6th grade, and he remembered reading about the rock and the fact that it had been underwater now for, I don't know, a very long time, and it just somehow caught Steve's fancy. He thought, hey, gee, I wonder if anybody will ever see that rock again, or will they ever find it? I wonder if I could someday find it. And of course he did.
I think it's worth telling quick story of how the very first photo was taken of the engraving of what they call the Indian head on the rock. Who was all in that boat, and how, remember the dam and the water level
Yes,
was low,
yes, that's right.
1920?
Yeah, the first, well, I'm sure everybody in Portsmouth has heard more than they want to about the rock, but it was over near the Kentucky shore. It was mostly out of water. It was, fair size. I think it must have been about this high off the surface of the water, and covered, maybe an area almost as big as this circle we're sitting in. And on Sundays, we're talking about 19th century now, mid-19th century. Well, there wasn't a whole lot to do for fun. So Sundays, day offs, people would get in a rowboat or whatever and row over there with their friends or a date or whatever and have a picnic at the rock. And while they were there, they'd climb up on the rock with a screwdriver or a knife or whatever and carve their initials in the rock. The initials are still there. All three of Judge James's sons, Henry, Arthur, and Jim, went over there together and all carved their initials in the rock, still there. At any rate, lots and lots of initials, and it got to be a famous landmark. Later on, around the turn of the century, the federal government got interested in trade on the Ohio River and thought it would be smart if we increased the depth of the river so that larger freight could be moved back and forth, more revenue and all that. So they began to build a series of dams on the river. And when they built the dam at the downhill side of the rock, naturally the water came up. The rock now disappeared under the river, and nobody had seen it for some time when Henry had written this book. There was a time around the 1920s, I don't remember the year, when something happened to that dam. It broke or malfunctioned or whatever, which meant that pool drained off down the river. There was the rock again. Nobody had seen it for a very long time at the early 20th century. And so some people got in a boat and went out there to try to take a picture of it. It wasn't completely out of water, but a little bit of it was. And I think it was Arthur, am I right? I think it was Arthur Bannon who devised the plan with Henry. It ought to be photographed quick because as soon as they fix it, it's going to disappear again. So I think it was Arthur's idea to get in a boat, as fast a boat as they could get, and race by the rock, which would, the wake of the boat then, would kind of suck the water away from the rock, and so very briefly more of the rock would be visible, while my grandfather would stand in the water with a camera, and when the maximum amount of water had been sucked away from the rock by the passing boat, he'd snap a picture, and they in fact did that. So that's how we got, I guess, just about the only photograph or first photograph of the rock, and it has appeared lots lately. But anyway, well, everybody knows the story of it. Steve getting the rock and bringing it here, and we all at last got a chance to, put our fingers in the carved initials and imagine, gee, my grandfather. Yeah, that's just what my grandfather did. Yeah.
Do we know where the rock is now?
Yeah, I've got a newspaper, actually. There's a new article in Community Comment. I brought it for you, but they've taken it to a garage and put it in a Kentucky garage.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No money to put it on display.
Oh my.
There is an attorney office in the Masonic building, and whose name is on that door today?
It's Bannon, Howland, and Deaver. Am I right?
So,
Deaver.
yes.
The Bannon was my grandfather Henry. The second Bannon was my father Lewis, and Bill Howland was a partner that joined them at some point, and Bob Deaver, who's the only one still there. I think they may have taken another partner now, but I don't remember. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's been there for. As a matter of fact, I think I read somewhere that is the oldest law firm, not the oldest office, but the oldest law firm in the state of Ohio. It was founded way back when the initial Bannon was the partner of somebody else. I mean, it went way back into the well into the 19th century, middle maybe of the 19th. I don't know, way back. Yeah, I think it's the oldest law firm in the United States. Although in the state of Ohio. But like I say, it's moved since its first location.
Sure.
Early in history, women didn't play such a prominent role, and they were very reluctant, I think, to take on certain hobbies and things. But there was someone in your family who actually was a taxidermist in the early days.
Yeah, really.
And who was that, and how did that?
Well, I talked about Mary Elizabeth Smith. The Smiths were big boat people on the river, who married the urchin boy who grew up and all that, Judge Bannon. And somehow or another, and I can't imagine how, she got really interested in taxidermy. Her, at least two, and maybe, was Jim also a big hunter and all that?
No, he wasn't.
Well, anyway, two of the sons, Arthur and Henry, were avid, God knows, avid hunters, and would bring back, enough to feed lots of people. And she got fascinated, and anytime they would find a particularly good specimen of anything, whatever it was, they would take it right to her, and she was a very talented taxidermist, and she would put the birds in all sorts of natural, flight conditions or whatever. I mean, very animated looking things, very realistic looking things, and beautifully done on, sort of a wooden oval that it sat on, and then a great glass globe that went over the whole thing. She got to be really famous for that, and did a lot of them, and they were on display all over town. And finally, the whole collection was given to Ohio State University, who had them on display for a while, and we're still trying to find out what became of those. I suspect they're in the corner of a basement somewhere up at OSU. Arthur, in the process, every time he saw a bird, ran in the house and got a gun.
It didn't matter what kind of a bird.
Oh, right. There's a bird, and he'd run in and get the gun. And when he was living on Offner Street, and did that, I've forgotten what the year was. It must have been around, 1920 or 30 or something. Ran outside, there was a bird, bam, shot it, fell to the ground, and he took it to his mother, who, mounted the whole thing. Turned out to be the last passenger pigeon in Sauter County. It's now in the, bottom floor of the public library.
Yes.
With a little plaque that tells everyone that, Art Bannon shot it. What can I tell you? It's,
Had nothing to do with it.
no, we're just the descendants.
The thing I can't understand is she had these cases of birds, and there were all kinds of birds.
Yeah.
Canaries and chickadees and sparrows and so on.
Yeah.
Now, why would Art shoot those?
For her, as a gift, I would think.
Oh, you think so?
Oh, I can't imagine him. He must have known that his mother was a taxidermist and loved that stuff, and probably praised him a lot when he showed up with a bird, especially if it was a nice, colorful one. And so,
Or the very last one.
or the yeah.
Did Henry travel to Alaska like
Oh, yes,
five
he did.
times? I thought I read where he would travel and just
To hunt.
Just to hunt.
And out in the west, Wyoming, and anything that was wherever animals were particularly jumping and edible, he would go off and kill some. Yeah.
What was the story on the islands? How did the islands come about up in Canada in the family, and was that just a retreat?
Yeah, it was just a retreat. It was a really magic place. He had been going up there. He even took my father up there when my father was 6 or 7 years old to hunt in Georgian Bay, which is a big arm off of Lake Huron. And they stayed at a kind of hotel on an island up there and took fishing trips. So my father remembered it from really, it must have been, 1905, 1906, a long time ago. And he continued to do that, to go up there and fish, and eventually his wife had gone up there, and the two of them were staying in a hotel out on one of those islands, and he and an Indian guide and another hunter friend of his hired the Indian, and they went out through the open water and then back into another group of islands because the fishing was supposed to be the best there. And they did that and caught a lot of fish, but then a terrible storm came up, and they can come up very quickly there. So returning in an open boat was out of the question. It would have been fatal. So they saw a light on an island and went over there and explained that they had to stay the night, and the people said, well, yeah, of course, you know, you can come in. And so they spent the night there, and he decided that, oh, and of course his wife was back in the hotel now, and he didn't come home, so she assumed that he was, you know, caught in the storm and dead or whatever. She was, you know, so he figured out, I'm never going to be able to do this again. So he decided the only thing to do was buy an island in this area where the fishing was the best, so that they could all go up there and stay. Otherwise, he wasn't going to get to do it anymore. So that's what he did. It was the early years of the Depression. It was about 1934. Real estate up there was very inexpensive then. So he bought an island with a cabin on it and moved in. And my father, who loved anything mechanical, went up there and set up a power generator, a diesel burning electric generator, and made it more habitable. And they started going up there. So I went the first time when I was, I think, 5 years old. It must have been 1930, 35 or 36, something like that. And went there until I think I finally sold it 2 or 3 years ago. At any rate, it's true wilderness. I mean, it is true wilderness. There are moose and deer and porcupines and, you know, mink. It's just a wonderful spot.
The Bannons were, as you said, were pretty wealthy back in the day after they had established themselves and they had the home up there, and they actually had some house help that would help with the house, and she's still one of those is still alive, and I'd like for you to share a little bit about her and what she meant to the family.
We just went to see her there this morning. She lives on Robinson Avenue. Or no, was it Robinson?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yes.
Right up, yeah.
Yeah. Her name is Layla Eckhart. She's an absolute miracle. She is so bright. She's 95 years old. She lives alone in her house and has for 20-some years. And the house is so much better organized than my house, so much cleaner than my house, so much, I mean, there's a 95-year-old that truly has it all together. She's absolutely wonderful. She worked for Arthur Bannon and his wife for 60 years, and she told me about a time when she babysat me. You know, 80 years old, I just don't expect to talk to someone that says, I used to babysit you. I mean, she's absolutely bright, alert, active. I mean, she does the house herself, and it's the first time I met her, which was since I was a child, was 2 years ago around the 4th of July, and I went to the address I'd heard about, and there was all this red, white, and blue bunting on the porch that was hanging up. It looked very 4th of July. And so when I met her and we first started to speak, I said, it was wonderful that you were able to get somebody to put that bunting up. You know, it's high up there on the porch all the way around. I said, I did that. I mean, what 93-year-old lady gets up and puts red, white, and blue bunting between the columns on the front porch? Damned if I know. Anyway, she's.
What role did she play in the Bannon home? Was she somewhat of a nanny, or was she just?
She was. We talked about all that this morning. She was the cook, and the absolute housekeeper, nanny. She was the whole thing. She even said that they had a man, I've forgotten his name, who was, you know, sort of mechanical and would repair things. But when he had trouble with, there was a time when they had some kind of intercom in the house and it broke. and they called the telephone company to please come out and fix our intercom. Well, the phone company came out and said, we can't, we don't think it's repairable. And so the man that they had hired tried to fix it, agreed, So Layla joined the man and they, fixed it. Layla got involved and helped fix the phone system. And even if they had car trouble, Layla would get together with the man and together they would repair the car. Meantime, she was making everybody's clothes in the house, including her own. She was a Renaissance woman.
It's amazing. Do you have anything else that you were...
John, you were the captain of a PHS football team back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about that? And you came back for a recent ceremony to mark that anniversary of somewhat.
Well, I did play football at PHS for 4 years, actually. And interestingly enough, I had 4 different coaches in 4 years. The turnover among coaches was probably because we were never very good. And so they tried to find somebody who could whip us into shape. But we had fun. There were a bunch of fellows. And by the way, I have a picture of the PHS football team back when I played. And they selected me as an all-state center, I guess in 47. I'm not sure which year it was. It must have been 47. And went to Columbus and got wined and dined. They seemed to want me and others to come to Ohio State, but it was a little overwhelming, and I decided not to do that. But I, thanks to you and Steve, I was able to have a look at the old stadium when we came back a couple of years ago to see the Rock, and brought back lots of memories, fond memories. We used the flood wall for training, running up and down the flood wall, the new flood wall, obviously. And so, yeah, we probably played, while I was there, probably played 50 games and maybe won 25 or less. Yeah, it was fun.
And you played in the old Spartan Stadium
The
back
old
then,
Spartan
right?
Stadium. And I just marvel at the new facility that
Sure.
the Clarks made possible. It's spectacular. Probably the best high school facility in the state at this point. Yeah. And yeah, they did bring a few of us back, but it was sort of a mixed group. There were football players and baseball players, and some of the graduates from here who made it in the big leagues even. Yeah, so that was fun.
Part of the focus of this interview is to find out about the area that we've all lived in and how it's changed over time. Since your days playing at PHS, what would you say is the biggest change in Portsmouth since you were a kid?
Oh, I think the city back then was a lot more viable and vital. Today, it's very disappointing to drive down Gallia or Chillicothe Street and see all of the empty storefronts, because I think seems to me when I was growing up and in high school, the population had to have been around 35 or 40,000, and now it's probably not much more than 20,000, and that's a sad thing. Yeah. I think that obviously the industrial base in the city has deteriorated to the point where it just can't support all of the things that used to be available to people, unfortunately.
Yeah, the steel mill and 2 shoe companies and enormous railroad yards and of course that's all gone. And that's the problem. It's we have to figure out a way somehow to begin to grow back into that, and not easy. So made overseas, that manufacturing in the whole United States has declined a lot, and especially in this local area. Not Portsmouth, but I mean the whole Appalachian area.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Was Henry's father referred to as Judge Bannon?
Yes.
Is that Judge Bannon?
Yes.
Is Judge Bannon and the three brothers and the daughter, are they all buried here, or where did they?
Yes, yes. Green Lawn Cemetery. We were just there yesterday. Yes, Henry. Edward Bannon and both of his wives is the first one that died in childbirth, and then the second one that he married in New York and came back with, and Aunt Mary Mulligan. They're all in the Catholic portion of Green Lawn Cemetery, and then there was my old Judge Bannon got in something of a tiff, I guess, with the Catholic Church, and walked out and
You got to tell them the whole story.
He was dancing all around it.
Well,
Wasn't
anyway, he was hoping to become a
right.
lawyer, and he figured, I need to do that. I need some public speaking experience. And up to now, he's been a Catholic all his life. Born a Catholic, his father, his family forever have been Catholic. So he decided that one way he could think of to get some speaking experience was to join the Masons. Is that the same as the Shriners?
Yeah, the Shriners, I think, are an offshoot of the Masons, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, at any rate, he joined whichever of those groups he thought would give him a lot of public speaking experience, and was getting good experience, and he liked it and all that. But of course, he made friends there, and they went to the county fair at one point. He and some of his friends from the Masons went to the county fair and were sitting there drinking a beer at some little beer stand, and somebody in the congregation saw him and reported it to the priest. And the next Sunday at church, the priest, in the middle of the sermon, said, by the way, we have a parishioner with us today that has a problem. Henry Bannon, you were seen drinking beer with a group of obviously very friendly Masons at the county fair, and as you know, that's, we don't think that's a good idea at all. Would you like to explain yourself or apologize? And he, I guess, was so offended that he stood up and said, no, I do not care to apologize. And with that, turned around and walked down the main aisle and out of the Catholic Church and never went back. His sister remained a Catholic, Aunt Mary Mulligan. But he and of course his offspring then, of course, the same thing, were Protestants of one flavor or another.
Wasn't the old homestead or something donated? Wasn't there nuns or something in that? Did you not tell me that? I thought it was turned into like a monastery.
Wasn't there a conservatory on the property?
I don't know.
At Bannon Place. It was one of the brothers' homes, I thought, and was
That's what I was referring to.
and was donated to somebody. I guess it was.
It might have been Henry. I think Arthur lived on the compound, probably in Judge's house. I think Charlotte also did the same thing, as long as he was single. But then when he met his future wife, Edith, and they got married and decided to move away to Offnear Street. And so there was no remaining Arthur Bannon house on the compound, but Henry Bannon did have a house on that compound, and then moved to Franklin Avenue. Avenue or Boulevard?
Well, it was intended to be a boulevard, but it turned out to be an avenue.
Anyway, Franklin. And he did have a house there, and then moved to Franklin, and I have never known what happened to that house, that original Henry Bannon house, but maybe that's what.
I think it was for a while.
Yeah.
A conservatory. I can remember seeing it sit back.
Really?
Way back from Albert Street, and yeah.
Okay, that's probably right.
I think so.
Amazing. As far as your involvement in the county, has there been a change in how people view the county, how people think about where they come from, or even their identity, if you will. Have you seen a change over the years in that?
I'll speak for that. I haven't, because I've been away from here for 30 years or more, 40 years probably, and so I really haven't been able to take the temperature of what's going on in the minds of people in Portsmouth. Mm-hmm. It's visible, as I said before, with storefronts closed up and all that, which is really too bad, but I can't really speak to the feelings.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can't either. I've been gone for even longer than that. I've been gone for I don't know, close to 60 years, I expect. And so the feelings and my perception of other people's feelings at that young age maybe aren't worth a whole lot.
Sure.
And so I'm not sure what their feelings were
Sure.
then, and I'm so recently just here that I don't know what the feelings are now.
Sure, sure.
They've certainly been polite and helpful at every opportunity. My word, what nice, genuinely nice people.
Oh, great. That's encouraging.
Yeah, no, really nice.
I don't want to cut you off. I want to make sure that you get to, tell any stories that you wanted to tell, or, have whatever say you would like to have. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that we have on record?
I won't know until you shut the camera off and I get out to the
yes.
car. And I'll sort of,
Can you follow me?
Is it worth talking about the two folks who were so kind to us at the cemetery yesterday?
Yes, it is. Of all the people here, and like I say, invariably people are so helpful and polite. And about a year ago I bought a cane. I wish I'd bought it 50 years ago. The minute you start carrying a cane, people become wonderful to you. I missed a great opportunity there. At any rate, without question, everybody has been more than helpful. There were two people yesterday at the cemetery that were so extraordinarily helpful, and I had the same experience there in that cemetery 2 years ago. Cemetery, Green Lawn, is not easy to find your way around. It's all kind of overlapping circles, and there aren't no roads are straight, and no road is labeled, and it's unless you know precisely by habit where you're going, you get lost. So we ended up going to the little maintenance office and met people. There was oh my, have I already forgotten? There was a young woman, blonde hair. What's her name? Sharon?
I'm not sure whether I ever got her name. Very attractive.
I'm very embarrassed to say I don't remember what her name is, nor do I remember the name of the man who was also there in the maintenance department. The girl I remember is the same one that helped me so much 2 years ago. At any rate, the amount of time they were willing to spend with us, showing us around, reproducing paper files for us to take home, it was so far beyond the call of duty. It would have been so easy for them graciously to say, well, it was nice seeing you, and glad we could help, and goodbye. They didn't do that. We kept coming up with more questions, and it didn't. They were extraordinary. John and I were saying we really ought to think of some way, either write the mayor or think of some way to recognize the extraordinary helpfulness of the people that work there in the maintenance department of the cemetery. At any rate, this can be part of that. They are amazing people, and I'm truly embarrassed. Well, I'm an old man, I forget. Anyways, truly, they were something.
Well, another issue that came out of our experience yesterday was the fact that the record keeping for the cemetery is abominable. It is all on paper, nothing in a computer or on discs or anything. And a number of years ago, a fire destroyed forever a lot of these records. And we said, well, why was this? No money. No money to do what really should be done. And maybe this will somehow put a plug in for those folks and their administrative burden that's just awful.
It's all on paper cards. It's really astounding.
Yeah.
And you can't learn anything without going through these endless card files. And obviously they could burn up, get flooded, get lost, get stolen, who knows. And then all the records up to, I think it was 1907,
I think so.
burned. They're gone. They will never be able to retrieve those records. So they only have records from then on. Some very nice lady apparently volunteered to come there once a week, spend a day every week, automating the records since then. And she worked at that for 7 years, 1 day a week for 7 years, and got all of those records automated. But then they tried to convert her automated files onto some other computer, and they weren't compatible, and pushed a bunch of buttons, and the next thing you knew, they were gone. 7 years of volunteer work trying to automate all those records vanished. That's really sad. At any rate, two things. Somehow, there needs to be a way to get those things automated in some kind of permanent digital way. And also the maps, when they begin to, they'll tell you, the card tells you where the grave is by code words and all that. And then they have these delicate maps that they unroll that look so fragile, and they can look on there and find the spot, and there's additional marks on there. That's the only copy of those. They look like they're on silk or something. There's some amazing, delicate-looking fabric, and they're constantly unrolling. Have to. Well, they can't last forever, and when they just go to shreds, it's over. I mean, So I don't know whether the answer is volunteerism to re-automate those things in a better planned way so that they don't get lost, or or
I think if the right people knew
yes,
the situation they're in, they could begin a fundraising drive.
I would think.
Because those records are their ancestors.
Sure.
Yes, it needs to be based on genealogy, and
They'll be gone if something drastic happens. And
yeah.
how many people in Portsmouth want their ancestry to be wiped
Correct.
out?
Correct.
And, yeah.
Right, and somehow those maps, and there are many of them because each map covers only a small section of the cemetery, those need to be reproduced quickly before they're just shreds.
We'll have to set you up with our local history department or something.
Yeah, something. I mean, yeah, and I would think genealogy is the way to approach it. People are going to be interested in protecting the identities and the locations of their, the historical graves of their family, and there's significant danger right now of that whole thing just toppling over, just collapsing.
Who does oversee the cemetery?
The city. The city reports the mayor.
Yeah, so
the mayor.
if we wrote, for example, to the mayor about these two folks that helped us.
That's what we ought to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get you their names. I can't pull them off the top of my head, but I can get you all that
great.
information
Great.
and set you right up with that.
That'd be great.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
You're welcome. It's fun.
Great.
Yeah.
And we always ask people at the end of their interviews, we're going to keep these in the local history department. Is there anything that you would like to leave as a record, some sort of life advice or anything like that for anyone who might view it?
Well, I guess save the cemetery records.
Very good. Yes, yes.
And the advice that an amazing old lady gave me long ago was, as we said goodbye for the last time, she looked down and with this intense face said, "Just live. Just live." Good life advice. It'll lead you to a very exciting life. Recommend it.
Could you just go over one more little thing here, and that is when you were in Ireland trying to find more relatives and so on, and the list.
Oh, yeah. That is a funny story. I'll be quick, I promise.
Okay.
Before you're out of date. Yeah, I went to Ireland because we don't know where Edward Bannon, the original immigrant, came from in Ireland. All the tombstone says is County Westmeath. That's immediately west of Dublin. But it doesn't say the name of a town or anything of that sort. That, and they normally did. So that tells me that he came from a farm. He was out in the country. There was no town. That's why it's not on the tombstone. So at any rate, I went to Ireland and spent about a week in the National Library there looking up any kind of record I could find about him and immigration and location and all that. Found nothing, and got to know all the librarians there, and they were, again, nice, helpful people. Finally, when they could see I was about to give up and leave on about the 7th day, one of them said, well, there is one thing you haven't checked. Way back about that time, there was something called the flax seed list, and the government decided that linen was a major export. They were wonderful weavers of linen. The government decided, why are we buying all this flax from abroad for our weavers to use? Why don't we grow our own flax? So the government decided what we ought to do is get a lot of flaxseed, the government, and give it free to any weaver that is willing to go out and grow their own flax. And right away I thought, well, that's a government giveaway, and any Bannon is going to jump up for a government giveaway. So we began to pursue that and went to the section of the flaxseed list on Westmeath, and all of the weavers that had come in saying, yes, I'd like free flaxseed, were from one town, and I've forgotten the name of the town. I've got it at home. So I went there and met a bunch of people named Bannon, and one of them said, oh, well, this is all so long ago. There's a woman, though, there's a woman who used to be Bannon. She married, and her name is different now. She lives out in the country. He said, I'll drive you there if you want, but she knows more about the Bannon family in the old days than anybody else. You need to meet her. And so I did go out there, and he went to the door and said, I'm sorry to bother you, but I've, got this damn tourist or whatever, looking for Bannon history. And what a neat old lady. She lived in an ancient thatched house, dirt floor. The only heat was a fireplace and a kettle on an iron thing that you could boil water and then bring it out for tea. And I mean, it was a very poor household. At any rate, what a wit. I remember her saying, oh, I know why you come. You're interested in my money. And obviously she didn't have any. At any rate, she said, come in, I've got tea. And so I went in and we began to talk, and we almost convinced ourselves that without doubt that was the family that we came from. All the names were the same. She remembered as a little girl, she was 80 or 90 something. She remembered as a little girl hearing the family get together and talk about the old days, and all the names that she was mentioning are the same names that was in the Bannon family later. And old Edward would surely have come over here, and when he began to have children and grandchildren, they would have named them after the familiar names back in Ireland. And all of that matched, but you can't absolutely claim it until you some kind of piece of paper, some kind of, it looked to me like all the indications were positive, but unproven, but she was so irresistible that I just have to believe it. That's it. That's the family.
I think when Towne writes his next book, it ought to be called The Flaxseed List.
The Flaxseed List, yes. That's
fantastic.
That's it for me.
All right. Thank you so much.